You're probably wondering how I ended up in this predicament. So yeah, I finished my dissertation. Who cares? I'm going to do a little video about what getting a PhD in music theory was like, because I sure as heck had no idea when I was trying to decide whether to apply to grad programs and all that. And then at the end, I'll give a little description of how my dissertation turned out. But if you just want to read the dissertation, there's a link in the description. Read it, I dare you. But for now, take a journey with me back in time. So I find myself in 2017 at the end of undergrad having double majored in music and physics, but really leaning more towards the music side of things. I wrote a thesis about rhythm in metal, which you can also read if you want. I didn't really apply for jobs as I was finishing undergrad, and I took a gap year where I just kept doing the jobs I was already doing. So I worked in restaurants and I coached at a gym and I played a ton of music and I gave myself time to figure things out, and it was one of the best years of my life. My undergrad advisor recommended that I apply for music grad programs, and after a little convincing, I decided to give it a shot. I didn't really have any idea of what music grad school was, and I had kind of four vague objections. First, I thought I wasn't good enough for it. Second, I thought it would be expensive. Third, I didn't think that anybody would want someone who was studying metal. And fourth, I didn't know what I was supposed to do after going to music grad school. I was mostly wrong about all of these, though, or at least my questions were answered in a satisfactory way at the time. So first, it turns out that I was good enough for it. I had kind of assumed that I would have to do auditions and prove that I knew how to either play jazz guitar unbelievably well, or sight read Bach chorales on piano, or sight sing really complicated atonal stuff, or improvise a rigorously correct fugue, or do something kind of old-fashioned like that. But as it turns out, there are quite a few grad programs actually for music that are just for either theory or musicology or composition. And while some of these do require some very traditional conservatory classical music type skills, a lot of them are only really interested in your writing samples. So the second objection about it being expensive actually wasn't a problem at all either, because most PhD programs in the US are fully funded, which means that they're not only completely free for you in terms of tuition, but they actually pay you to go. They give you a research stipend, which is compensation for teaching that you do while you're in grad school. Master's programs, on the other hand, are typically not funded, and those are the ones you have to go into debt for. I didn't realize that PhD programs were different and they are funded, and I also didn't realize that you could go straight to a PhD program without doing a standalone master's. But you can do that. You can just apply to PhD programs without doing a master's and see what happens. Maybe like half the people who are in grad school with me over the last 6 years came straight from undergrad, and the other half did a master's before coming to PhD camp. Third, lots of places are actually very open-minded about what music you study. And they're even looking for kind of more diversity of repertoire that their grad students are looking at. And metal is one of the more established kind of niche topics in music academia at this point, and even in music theory specifically. There have been at least 5 full music theory PhD dissertations about metal in North America before mine, not to mention all of the musicological work that I don't know as well. And at this point, there are also so many articles and conference papers, more than anyone can keep up with. And there are also several full-length books either already published or on the way. The problem, if you're interested in studying metal, has become figuring out what to read rather than trying to find any little relevant thing to read at all, which was what my problem was when I was in high school and early undergrad. Fourth, the answer to the most annoying question people ask, which is, what are you going to do with that degree? Is that if you're going into music grad school, most people are expecting to get a job teaching music at the university level. The catch is that that job market is pretty rough and seems to be getting worse, but that's a story for another time. And to be clear, I got a music theory PhD, which does not set you up in a direct way to work in the music industry. Like, I'm not a producer. It's not a performance degree. I've kept up my guitar playing, but a lot of people don't keep up their instrument performing or composing or anything like that. Composing was not part of the degree at all. And what I learned is not even really directly transferable to teaching high school, which is a pretty different set of skills. Like if you go into music pedagogy, so teaching music, that's a kind of different area of study than music academia, music research. There's some overlap, and I'm lucky to have done kind of a lot of different things over my time in grad school. But the specific training you get in grad school for music is to be a university level professor who also publishes original research. So I applied to, I think, 8 schools. I got into a few of them, and I ended up choosing Columbia because I wanted to be in New York, the best city in the world, and the music department here is big and open-minded. I moved to New York and began my time at PhD camp. Most PhD programs in the US are scheduled to take between 5 and 7 years, and I think the general outline is more or less the same for most of them, but I'm going to be talking specifically about what we had to do at Columbia. So at Columbia, you spend the first year just taking classes, which is nice because it gives you a chance to kind of find your footing and deal with the imposter syndrome that everyone has and get used to living in New York and get to know your cohort. I got very lucky with having a really friendly and fun cohort. These classes were mostly seminars, so they're small discussion-based classes where you read a ton each week and then talk about it and write a paper at the end of the semester. And then I also took a few more traditional lecture-style classes on set theory and Shankiran analysis because I felt like I had to do that to be a music theorist. And the first year was fun, largely because I had a great cohort, and it was really fun to find people as nerdy and detailed in their thinking about music as me. And, I got to read a ton of really cool stuff and talk about it. And, being in New York, seeing all the shows here, everything, it was great. Over the summer after the first year, I wrote my master's thesis, which is that long thing about Parallax 2 that you may have seen, and I've done a bunch of videos about. This was basically just building out a seminar paper that I'd already written, which in turn was a grown-up version of a paper that I'd written my first year in undergrad. So if you're going to be in academia, as a side note, it's a lot of spinning through the same stuff and just keep making it better until you have some publishable version of it. And sometimes this process takes, a decade. So this master's thesis earned me the MA degree technically, although it's not really a standalone degree at Columbia. Although I guess if you leave after this, you get to say you have an MA. During second year, things got much busier. I started coaching at a gym in New York to supplement the stipend. The stipend, by the way, is it's pretty good. And Columbia has, well, actually, relative to cost of living, it's not that great, but it's enough to live. Some people live on just the stipend, but most people have some sort of side hustle. And then I also started TAing on top of still taking classes. And eventually I was starting to study for exams. So there's a lot of stuff happening in the second year. So I took a bunch more really cool seminars and then finished them all on Zoom in the end of the spring 2020 semester. Also in the spring and summer after second year, we took our comprehensive exams. So this is kind of the checkpoint that you have to get through to go on to the rest of the degree. Some PhD programs, I think it's very competitive and they're trying to weed people out or whatever. Here they kind of it's a small cohort. If they let you in, they want you to succeed. So big picture, it's not that stressful because if you fail them, you get a chance to take them again. But it's a ton of work, and I'll explain what all that is now. So there are 3 comprehensive exams for music theory, and they've actually changed even since I took them here. So, if you're looking at a program or whatever, look at the most recent stuff. But we had a repertoire exam, an analysis exam, and a bibliography exam. So the repertoire exam sounds the scariest, but was actually probably the easiest. We had 5 audio and 5 score examples with no identifying information, and they were picked from the entire history of Western music, so from 1200 to last week, and we had to make educated guesses about what they were, who wrote them, and when they were from. I think I actually got 8 out of 10 of the composers wrong, but I still passed because I was very close. So I guessed Haydn instead of Mozart, but you give justifications for why you think it, and if those are good enough, they'll at least, they let us get away with it. It's kind of a silly, old-fashioned exam, but it was fun to study for because my cohort did it all as a group, and it meant that I got to listen to a ton of stuff that I never would have listened to otherwise. You really don't know what it's like to get Buxtehuded until it happens to you. For the analysis exam, we were given a choice of 4 pieces and about a week to prepare a 20-minute presentation for the theory faculty, after which we got grilled on our presentation. This was the most nerve-wracking one for me because it had a reputation for being hard to pass on the first try, but mine went fine. I wrote about this absolutely wacky Scriabin piece, which was pretty cool. The bibliography exam was the most work out of the three by far. We were given 4 categories, and for each one we had to put together 25 sources, get the list approved, and then read all 100 of those sources over the summer. Then in the fall, kind of start of the fall semester, we had 6 hours of timed essay questions about those sources. This worked out to reading 100 academic books and or articles over a few months, which ended up being like 150 to 200 pages of reading every single day. And in a lot of ways, I was lucky that this happened during the pandemic because I didn't have, a lot else going on. I treated it kind of like training for lifting or an endurance sport. So I scheduled everything out and made my way through everything very slowly. It was good to do so much reading. Like it's cool to have the chance to do that because you start to see connections and patterns in a much deeper way in like the whole literature, and you kind of get this feeling that music theory like better, which is like always false. You can never read everything, and the only way you'll be able to get closer is just spending a lifetime doing it. But doing that much concentrated reading was helpful and feeling like I'd made a dent in like all the things that people say you should read and stuff that eventually was helpful for my dissertation and that sort of stuff. It also made me very bad at reading because you have to read so fast. It took me a long time after these exams to break the habit of always skimming. But I guess that's also a useful skill to have when you need to read a lot of things fast. It's kind of a weird paradox of academia that everyone is always writing, but at least for me, it's often felt like I have to spend so much time writing that I really have to shortchange the reading. And then it starts to feel like, who are we even writing for anyways if no one has time to read anything because they have to spend all their time writing to get CV lines and get jobs and tenure and whatever. But anyways, I passed those exams. It took a lot out of me, and I was done with classes by then too. So I was just TAing and doing some grading and some transcription work and doing some other odd jobs to start the third year, which is nice because I got a chance to catch my breath a little bit. And that is also when I started doing a little YouTube channel you may have heard of called This One You're Watching Now. And if anybody has any good recommendations for places to eat around here on YouTube, I'm new. That would be much appreciated. See ya. Toward the end of third year, I was starting to write my dissertation proposal, which I finished during that summer. I have a whole video about what that version of the project was, but I had to do a full write-up of my plan and defend it, kind of like a mini version of what I would do with the actual dissertation. And that went pretty smoothly. I was lucky that I had something pretty clear that I wanted to focus on. My advisor was great, and I mainly was just working on scaling down the subject matter to make it a little more manageable and also deepening. My advisor helped me find some slightly more ambitious ways to deal with this, to study this material. A lot of people struggle with finding a single topic to write about, and luckily I had a pretty clear plan from the beginning, even if the whole thing was still kind of an unbelievable amount of work. In the start of fourth year, I started teaching on my own instead of TAing. So Columbia is a little more aggressive about getting grad students to actually teach, largely because there's this class that's required for all undergrads, music majors and non-music majors alike, called Music Humanities. So they always need people to teach it because they have like 100 sections of it every semester. This is the class I've taught almost every semester since then. I think this is also kind of maybe a misconception. Like people are like, oh, what are you doing in grad school? I'm like, oh, I'm teaching, I'm writing. And they're like, oh, so you're TAing? No, I'm actually teaching. This is like one of the reasons that it works out for Columbia is that, they pay tuition. They just move money from different columns around and they give you a stipend, but really they're getting a really good deal on college level professors because we're teaching the same classes as the actual faculty for most of our time as grad students. Fourth year was kind of stressful because I was a little burnt out still from the exams and all the work I'd done for conferences and starting to stick my tentacles out into the grown-up academic world. And I'd really gone hard on that with the pandemic. But fifth year is a freebie where you don't have to teach. And the idea is that you just work on your dissertation, which I did pretty much. Not everyone does. And, I took, you have to take a lot of time off. You have to kind of recharge. It's working on the dissertation is so slow and it takes so long. So I took a few months to recover and work on some side quests. Then I started doing interviews for my dissertation in the fall of my 5th year. I did a ton of writing and reading and analysis. And partly because I thought I had a reason to finish quickly, I got a full draft together before the end of my 5th year. I taught over the summer. That's another thing. I teach over the summers too to make a little extra money, and then taught all of 6th year. So 6th year was a grind, and I think it is for pretty much everyone because you're teaching fully. You are finishing a dissertation, which one of our department chairs says is one of the hardest things any one person can do. I don't think that's quite true, but in terms of like putting together a project on your own, I think that it might be, because as an aside, it's really intense work spread out over a really long time, and you do it almost completely alone with like very little incentive other than finishing the PhD. I think this is why so many people get to the dissertation and then never finish a dissertation. It's just like it's really kind of a slog. Parts were fun, but I find like with a lot of my academic projects, the fun part is very early on, and you have all these cool ideas and you figure something out and you have a cool way of explaining it, whatever. And then you spend years just like grinding that same idea to turn it into something that you can publish or into a dissertation or whatever. And you get better at it, but it's like it's pretty intense. And then you're also applying to jobs, which is its own other kind of whole like load of stuff to do, because you're preparing all these materials and each place wants different materials, and you have to if you're lucky, you're doing interviews and job talks and preparing even more. You're doing teaching demos and doing even more work on top of everything else that's going on. So I think big picture, I came out pretty well at the end of 6th year, but dealing with a 200+ page document is really unwieldy and difficult. And then, it's never done. There's all this formatting stuff you have to do. And of course, I made things pretty hard for myself by having a million images in it and wah, wah, wah. I think it turned out okay. I think I'll be really proud of it when the dust settles and I have a little more perspective, because it was very ambitious and I think I did some pretty cool new stuff in a few different areas. But I'm pretty sick of it right now still, So the last few steps of the dissertation are that you have to clear it with your advisor, then you distribute it to your committee of 5 experts in the field. They take a month to read it, then you defend it. Which means we all get on some of you in person, some on Zoom, to talk about your work and ask you questions about it for 2 hours. And then you get some more edits to make if you're lucky, if they let you pass. Then after you deposit, you go to graduation. Then at some other time, apparently they actually convey your degree. And then it's a little unclear at what exact moment you're done. But at some point you become done, and now I've been done for a month or 2. So for the actual dissertation, as it turns out, I did things a little bit differently than I expected to in the proposal, though I think the initial plan kind of stuck around more than a lot of people's do. The whole thing is about tactus transformations, which is my umbrella term for any time the steady tactus, so like the steady beat, is changed either with a tempo change, a resetting of phase, or the appearance or disappearance of the beat altogether. I had 4 chapters that looked at this from different perspectives. So the first chapter is a hardcore music theory taxonomy for all the freaks, with approximately 1 million pretty pictures. And this is also the chapter that has a lot of examples that originally were YouTube videos. So I have a video playlist of all of those in the description if you want. Chapter 2 looks at how bands write and perform tactus transformations. So I used interviews I did with a ton of musicians that I admire, including Greg from Car Bomb, Liam from the Dillinger Escape Plan, Naveen from Entheos and Animals Leaders, Kate from Pupil Slicer, Vivian from Victory Over the Sun, Tim from Anomalous, and 3/4 of Piron. I also read a bunch of interviews with other musicians that I wasn't able to get in touch with. And all of this informed this kind of survey of techniques that bands use. So the main takeaway is that there are a million ways to get to tactus transformations using all sorts of strategies and tools, and that all of these strategies and tools rely a ton on musicians' ears. So more specifically, I argue that metal musicians have an unusually huge capacity for rote memorization by mimesis, by mimicking, and that they use this to make the really complicated music possible. Chapter 3 is a short kind of pilot study for a new quantitative method for analyzing headbanging that I developed, where I animated dots by hand to stay on people's noses in a video of Carbon playing Lights Out. Then I used computer vision to track and give position data for the dots. Getting this methodology up and running for this one example was a lot of work, but it should be kind of straightforward to apply this to other situations now. So if you, yes, you, have any cool footage or links to videos or whatever where you can see the crowd moving to metal from a steady, unbroken vantage point. So if there's like, the video I used was this drum cam that you happen to be able to see the whole crowd. I'd love to see those because they're kind of hard to find. I think eventually I want to take my own videos, but that's maybe a little ways away. There are a bunch of ideas that came from this analysis of headbanging, including that there's a lot of variety in how people actually move to this music, that they sync to the cymbals if they do sync to anything, and stuff like that. But the biggest takeaway was that there's evidence of one of my hunches going into this whole dissertation. So like my idea for this dissertation basically is that tactus transformations make the music more like kinetic. It makes it more explosive, more, it makes you want to move. And there's evidence for that in this data because at the moment of tactus transformations, you can see people kind of stumble and then they come back in even bigger at the new tempo, which seems to be kind of a microcosm for the whole idea of tactus transformations, where they kind of trip you up and then they draw you back in even more intensely. My feeling has always been that tactus transformations make the music more kinetic, more explosive, and this might be the beginning of showing what I mean by that with quantitative data for all the squares out there who don't feel it. No offense to the squares. Finally, the 4th chapter asks why bands put so much effort into writing and performing tactus transformations. The short answer is that they like them and they sound cool, of course, but this chapter goes into a ton of detail based on all the interviews I did about why they like them, what they like about them. And again, there are a lot of reasons that I've kind of grouped together from all the people I talked to. Largely coalescing around the idea of difficulty, the idea of community, and various metaphors. So yeah, I guess I am proud of this dissertation. The thing that I'm really happy with is that I brought so much different metal into it and that I relied so much on what the people who make and listen to this music say about it. Go ahead and read it if you want, and feel free to ask questions in the comments either about the dissertation or music grad school, and I'll try to be more responsive than I usually am. Oh, and you might be wondering what's next for me, and hey, join the club. For the next year at least, I'll still be teaching at Columbia and working on all the academic stuff that I can and applying to more academic jobs. I'm just about settled into my new apartment, and I have a 6 studio setup, so I'm going to be putting that to use, pumping out some YouTube videos, hopefully, with the same regularity that I used to. And it's probably time to start writing music again, so you can expect another Florida Exodus album in the next 500 years. But yeah, beyond that, I'm trying to get back in touch with the music. Your will to do stuff takes a beating when you're finishing a PhD, so I'm kind of trying to regrow that slowly. Thank you all for the support. Doing this channel was truly the thing that made me excited about doing music theory again and gave me kind of the boost to finish the PhD after the low point of being done with exams. So thank you for that. May your fortunes trouble and cease to smile upon you. See ya.